There's a new day dawning, the time is at hand, where the glory of the Lord will be revealed to every man. Open the door, open the door, open the door, and let the King of Glory in. Open the door. Open the door, open the door, and let the King of Glory in.
Well, let the King of Glory in. Open up the doors, thoughts for right now, to fling wide you heavenly gates. Prepare the way of the risen Lord. The Apostle John was on the island of Patmos. He was in prison for the testimony of Jesus Christ. And he heard a sound behind him and said, Behold, I looked, there was a door standing open in heaven. And I heard a voice which was like a trumpet speaking with me, saying, Come up here, and I will show you the things which must take place. That's what we need, my friend. We need a heavenly perspective of the things that are going on in the world around us, the things that the Word of God foretold us would come to pass, those things which must take place, those things which are taking place even now. That is what this broadcast is all about, discussing the issues of the day, discerning the times in which we live from a biblical perspective and worldview. Good afternoon, everybody. Andy White here. What you are about to hear is the fusion of heart, mind, and soul. And I want to welcome everybody from all across the fruited plain and all around the spherical globe. Thanks for tuning in to this week's edition of Open Up the Doors. I am streaming live on my Facebook page. If you'd like to join in the conversation over there, I welcome you to go over to facebook.com/faithfm. 91.7. If you never like the Open Up the Doors page, please like the page and share this around Facebook. Share this around your social media streams. Invite people over here to Open Up the Doors. Got a lot on the plate today. Got a lot. It's going to be a really intense broadcast. But just let me get some of these preliminaries out of the way before I get into what I have. You can also follow me on Parler and CloutHub at AJ White 777. That is for both Parler and CloutHub. Follow me there, AJ White 777. You can email me also at ajwhite777 at icloud.com if you'd like to correspond with me. And we are, of course, streaming live here from Faith FM. If you're outside of the Faith FM broadcast area here on the east end of Long Island, the best way to listen to Faith FM would be to download the free Faith FM app. We have the app both for the Android platform and for the Apple platform. Get it at your respective app stores. Great way to listen to Christian programming from the east end of Long Island 24/7. All right, I think that covers my preliminaries. Can't get that word out today. But as I was getting ready for the broadcast here, a very important and breaking news update just came up in my news feed, and I'm just going to read to you what this breaking news is all about. Lady Justice has gone missing. Her last known whereabouts were at her place of employment at the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. However, it appears she went missing from the Department of Justice some time ago, but it has taken a while before anyone actually noticed she was missing. This report goes on to say her fellow colleagues said they all just assumed she was busy going about her judicial responsibilities and legal duties. However, it is being reported that search parties are now being organized and dispatched immediately to seek her out. She has, in the past, been known to frequent several of her favorite places of interest, which included local courthouses and institutions of law. She is also known to have especially enjoyed spending time at federal and Supreme Courts around the country. But as of late, no one has seen her. She is nowhere to be found. Lady Justice has gone missing. A missing persons report has been filed, and an Amber Alert has been initiated. It is feared she may have been abducted. She was last seen wearing a blindfold, carrying a pair of scales in one hand. She is also known to carry a sword at her side, as she was authorized to do so. But now it is greatly feared that Lady Justice may have fallen into the hands of her nemesis, Grave Injustice. Furthermore, since she's gone missing, a completely unqualified and incompetent imposter named Social Justice has usurped her authority and has taken over for the beloved Lady Justice. This is a very serious situation, and has resulted in the Department of Justice to be thrown into a state of utter confusion regarding its mission, as well as a serious corruption and misdirection of its purpose and abuse of its authority. If anyone has any information regarding the whereabouts of Lady Justice, please contact your local officials immediately. The situation is dire. The prophet Isaiah cried out, "We look for justice, but there is none. Justice is far from us. Justice is turned back, and righteousness stands afar off." Then the Lord saw it, and it displeased him that there was no justice. My friends, what has happened to Lady Justice in America? Lady Justice, of course, is an allegorical personification of the moral force in judicial systems. Her attributes are a blindfold and scales that she holds in her hand and a sword that she garnishes at her side. The scales of justice. As I said a moment ago, Lady Justice is often most depicted with a set of scales, typically suspended from one hand, upon which she measures the strength of a case's support and opposition. The scales representing the weighing of evidence. And if you notice in her depictions, whether it be statues or pictures or renderings of Lady Justice, the scales, they lack a stand. She just holds them with her hand, because that is to signify that evidence should stand on its own as it's weighed out in the balance of the scales of justice, even as the law of the Lord states it. Leviticus 19 says, "You shall do no injustice in judgment. You shall have honest scales and honest weights." Proverbs 11:1 says, "Dishonest scales are an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight." Justice is to be honest. Prophet Micah, actually the Lord speaking through the prophet Micah in chapter 6, verse 11. The Lord says, "Shall I count pure those with wicked scales and with the bag of deceitful weights?" As I looked over these scriptures this past week in preparing my heart and my thoughts for today's broadcast, I thought of certain analogies about the wicked scales that the Lord's talking about, and about the deceitful weights, and that dishonest scales are an abomination in his sight. And I thought, by way of analogy, let me suggest to you that the wicked scales and the deceitful weights in our day can be likened to the adjectives that are put today in front of the word justice. You see, the left, my friends, the left loves to place adjectives in front of the word justice. Bible never does that. But today we have social justice. Today we have environmental justice. A different weight. It's a different kind of justice, I think. Today we have economic justice and racial justice. We have this kind of justice and that kind of justice, and whatever other flavor of the day justice there is. I believe those are wicked scales and deceitful weights, because as someone has wisely pointed out, there is only justice and injustice. And true justice needs no adjective in front of it. At the moment you place an adjective in front of the word justice, at the moment you see an adjective preceding the word justice, you can rest assured, my friends, there's an injustice being committed somewhere else at someone else's expense. One of the greatest ironies of this present age is the rampant injustice that rules the day in the name of justice. The left and all these so-called social justice warriors, they're the greatest purveyors of injustice the world has ever seen. True justice speaks the truth, defends the vulnerable. But the imposters of justice, the social justice warrior crowd, when they talk about equity, they actually mean discrimination. When they talk about justice, they actually mean revenge. And sadly, we are now suffering as a nation the logical consequences of how moral relativism, now known as wokeism, I think, we're now suffering the consequences of how this wokeism, how this moral relativism has crept into the justice and jurisprudence systems of our nation, has influenced and corrupted our justice system. Let me give you some examples, and I've got a lot of them today. In fact, I've got so much stuff stacked up today, I know I'm not going to be able to get to it all. I'm going to go through some examples without getting into the weeds, because I want to draw a picture of what's going on and the ramifications and the consequences of what we're really seeing in our present situations. How there's been a perversion of justice. But have you noticed lately in the news that there's been like a plague of shoplifting spreading from sea to shiny sea all across the fruited plain? Now you might say, well, the shoplifting, that's kind of a minor thing. That's the problem. People thought it was minor. But we've got this plague of shoplifting that's spreading all across the nation, with the epicenter being the $900 five-finger discount that was established in California. And now Walgreens in San Francisco is now shutting down 5 stores in San Francisco because of rampant and unrelenting theft. And folks, just as I predicted would happen, way back in February of 2020, I did a broadcast titled "When Lawlessness Becomes Lawful." And in that broadcast, almost 2 years ago, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand the ramifications and the consequences of these stupid policies and laws that these social justice warriors put in place. But California passed a new law. It's not so new anymore because they passed this law a few years ago. They passed a law, quote unquote, decriminalizing theft down from a felony to a misdemeanor. And they passed a series of bills aimed at emptying jails and prisons. It was called Proposition 47 a few years ago. And it carried the euphemistic name, the Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Act. It's resulted in doing neither. And Proposition 47's stated purpose was to keep nonviolent offenders out of jail, something similar to bail reform laws that have been enacted here in New York as well. But to achieve this goal in California, they decriminalized a number of quote-unquote lesser offenses, including retail theft. The law raised the value of the amount of merchandise someone could steal while only being charged with a misdemeanor, if they were charged at all, by the way. So you could steal nearly $1,000, $950 to be exact. So imagine, if you will, because this is how it works. People, it's been on the news lately because it's gone out of control. Oh, like anybody thought it wouldn't? Did anybody really think this wouldn't increase theft? Hello? But imagine, if you will, walking into a Best Buy and ripping a laptop off the counter. Just make sure it's under $950 and walk out of the store. If they catch you, all you'll get is a ticket. If they catch you, if they even bother to run after you, which they're not. The cops are just letting them go. There was video footage. I don't know, about a month or so ago, of people. I think it was a Walgreens, in fact. There were people. There were just people rushing into the Walgreens, going down the aisles, filling up bags of stuff, and then running out the store. People are videotaping them. People are standing around watching them, but nobody's trying to stop them. Well, like I said a few minutes ago, because of all this rampant and unrelenting theft, there is now 5 stores that are going to be shut down. That means there's going to be hundreds of people put on unemployment. That means there's going to be empty stores. There's going to be people who rent out those stores. The landlords who rent out those stores would not be getting their rent. You see how this thing snowballs? Somebody says, "Oh, it's just a little theft." No. There's always residual and ancillary and consequential type of effects from any type of sin. And this is the problem when we try to minimize things by the laws of men, by the dictates of men, professing themselves wise, they become fools. So guess what the result of this brilliant idea has been to decriminalize theft? People are shocked. Oh my God, they're shocked to find out that the bill decriminalizing retail theft has resulted in, guess what? More retail theft. Yeah, you got to be a real rocket scientist. Like I said, I reported on this very thing 2 years ago. But now, 2 years later, it's coming to a head. And the ramifications of what we talked about back then is coming to fruition. So in the name of social justice, robberies and crime is on the rise, and the arrests and prosecutions are down. And you know what, my friends? It all plays right back to the truth of the Word of God, where we read in Ecclesiastes, because the sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, therefore the heart of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil. When people can understand, when criminals can understand that they can get away with whatever it is they're trying to get away with, it doesn't subdue it. It doesn't make it go away. It makes it grow worse. It's the nature of the beast. You see, the moral commandment of God says, "You shall not steal." Period. It doesn't say you can steal under $950, or you can steal a little bit. The commandment says, "You shall not steal," whether it's a little bit or a large amount. Theft is theft. And when a little bit of theft goes unpunished, it progresses into a whole lot more theft and other crime. When a little bit of crime goes unpunished, no matter what the crime, it creates more and more serious crime. But we have turned aside from the laws of God and replaced them with the laws of men. And the scripture says, they have turned aside and perverted justice. When we turn aside from the laws of God and replace them with the laws of men, we pervert justice. And again, the prophet Hosea, God said, "Ephraim is oppressed and broken in judgment because he willingly walked by human precept." Let's update this. Let's take the word Ephraim out, because the principle is exactly the same. Let's take the word Ephraim out and put the word America into this verse. America is oppressed and broken in judgment because he willingly walked by human precepts. My friends, anyone with 2 eyes and 2 ears and a functioning brain can see that crime is skyrocketing all over the country because of these lawless, anti-justice policies. They call them social justice, like I said a moment ago. Social justice, economic justice. No, they're anti-justice. You want to put some kind of qualifier in front of these policies? Let's call it what it is. They are anti-justice that perverts justice. And heck, you don't even need functional eyes to see what's going on. A blind man could see it. Well, unless you're the new governor of New York, I guess, anyway. Kathy Hochul, our unelected new governor, just recently, I mentioned a moment ago about how it was about a year and a half ago now, maybe it was 2 years ago now, 2.5 years ago, I think it was now, that they enacted the bail reform laws, which even the moment they enacted those bail reform laws here in New York, crime went up. This was before COVID. Crime went up. Crime went through the roof because of all the they were arresting people literally. There were stories, and again, I shared them back then a few years ago. There were stories of people getting arrested 2, 3, 4 times in one day because they would get arrested, they'd be brought down, and they'd be released without bail because of New York's bail reform. So crime was going up. Then it skyrocketed even more during the days of COVID. But let me get back to where we are right now, because just recently, I think it was last week, Kathy Hochul, again the new governor here in New York, she released from Rikers Island. Rikers Island here is a jail here in New York. She released from the Rikers Island Correctional Facility a large amount, hundreds of criminals, and shocker, I think from what I read, I think it was over 420 criminals she released from the prison about a month ago. But here's the shocker. Here's the thing that, who would have thought? So many of them now are getting rearrested all over New York City. Will someone please find Lady Justice quickly? Because those in charge now have all turned aside and perverted justice. Stick around, folks. I've got a whole lot more to share when I come back. Some serious stuff.
Earth groans and waves.
But here's Catherine Scott. Will justice
For
reign?
the king to come with trembling hands. Will justice reign?
Will justice reign? Catherine Scott. This is Andy White here at Faith FM. The fusion of heart, mind, and soul, because music is what feelings sound like. So such a perfect song to use and listen to for the topic and for the burdens of the things that are on my heart for this broadcast. But you are listening to Open Up the Doors, Integrity in Broadcasting here on Faith FM, WEGB 90.7 if you're just tuning in, 93.3 in Napeague, and WEGQ 91.7 in Quag. Will justice reign was that song. In the end, it will. We know it will at the end. But we got some stuff to get through. We've got some battles to fight. And as I said in the opening monologue, has anybody seen Lady Justice? Witnesses have reported that she was last seen stumbling around the streets of D.C., seemingly dazed and confused due to having her blindfold torn off her face. One of the other attributes of Lady Justice is she's depicted wearing a blindfold, as many of you I'm sure know. But the blindfold represents impartiality. It's the ideal that justice should be applied without regard to wealth and power or any other status. Again, it's a thoroughly biblical precept. Leviticus 19 again, you shall do no injustice in judgment. Listen to what the Word of God tells us. Sounds a lot like Lady Justice. You shall not be partial to the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty. In righteousness you shall judge your neighbor. Wow, you shall not be partial to the poor? That is 180 degrees opposite of what the social justice warriors promulgate. Nevertheless, true justice means equal justice under the law. Lady Justice is blindfold because she doesn't need to know whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whether you're famous, whether you're not famous, whether you're a political elitist or just an average Andy. Equal justice under the law. You know, I think one of the things that angers me the most in these days in which we live is the injustice that I do see. It's what's moved me to want to bring forth this broadcast. Because equal justice under the law was once the immovable bedrock upon which we built America's jurisprudence system upon. But today, it's become painfully obvious that America has developed into a two-tier system of law. And would I even dare to suggest a three-tier justice system? One for the ordinary citizens, another one for the powerful and the elite, and now I'll even suggest there's a third level, one for the invading illegal aliens that are breaking our immigration laws, aided and abetted by this lawless regime that is now in power in the district of corruption. Equal justice under the law. No, not anymore. We have unmitigated, folks, unmitigated insanity in this country masquerading as equity. Last week, for instance, an 18-year-old high school student, he shot up his high school. He shot his teacher. He shot several of his students. 4 or 5 people were shot. But he got released the very next day on bail for no other reason, or I think there was probably a couple of reasons, but the primary reason is that they said he had been previously bullied. In fact, if you went over to his family's social media page on Facebook, they were celebrating the fact that he got released after shooting up his school. Because, you know, he had a good reason to shoot up his classmates and his teacher, because they had been bullying him. Oh, I see. Oh, and he just happens to be a black kid, too. In case you haven't noticed, this story hasn't really been in the media that much. Now, does anyone doubt for a moment, had it been a white kid that had shot up his school, and there's been many, but it would have been, as we have seen in the past, it would have been in the news for weeks on end, with all of the leftists and all of the liberals in Congress crying out, as they always do, for more gun control laws. But where were they this past week? With this incident, there's not even a peep out of any of them. What's going on here? Equal justice under the law? People being treated fairly? Double standards? Maybe. So this kid, as I said, he shoots up his school and he gets out on bail the next day. In the meantime, let's not forget, we at this very moment have people sitting in a Washington, D.C. prison going on for 10 months now without even being charged, which is unconstitutional. No charges have been brought against them, or they're just being charged with trespassing inside the Capitol building on January 6th, and they are still rotting in a prison 10 months later. Their constitutional rights have been completely and utterly trampled underfoot. And regardless of what one may think of the events of January 6th, this is a grave injustice. And they are, in fact, political prisoners. They are. We have political prisoners right now in the United States of America. We like to talk about China and Korea having political prisoners, and Iran. Well, right now, America is in that list. We have political prisoners of a corrupt justice system sitting in D.C. prisons right now, some of them in solitary confinement. For what? Look at the videos. The Capitol Police were opening the doors and letting people march in. Some of these people didn't even know they were breaking the law, but they actually weren't breaking the law. The ones that weren't committing violence weren't breaking the law. Look at the videos. There's hundreds of videos. In fact, there's so many videos, the DOJ doesn't even want to release them because it's been a cover-up. It's been a setup, as I've said, since January 6th. But I don't want to digress too much. But I'm just trying to show you here how this thing called social justice works. And Lady Justice is wreathing in pain wherever she is. I've said it so many times on this broadcast over the years. But equal justice under the law is dead in America. I know I've been saying that for a long time. Some of you are probably tired of me saying it. But it is progressively getting worse and worse, as it always has in every Marxist regime throughout history. Did you hear about this one? Kim Foxx, prosecutor of Chicago. Remember Kim Foxx? She was the one that bought into the hoax that, what was that guy's name? Smollett. What was that guy's name? Jesse Smollett? I can't remember his first name. But remember when he said he had been assaulted at 4 o'clock on a freezing January morning by MAGA people in Chicago? I don't think there are any MAGA people in Chicago. Anyway, the whole thing was a fraud. But she was helping him to go after the fraud, this Kim Foxx. But just last week, that was old news. She happens to be Cook County State Attorney. But just last week, she's actually having a back and forth right now with Chicago Mayor Lightfoot because Kim Foxx won't prosecute gangbangers who were having a shootout last week like they were at the OK Corral, a shootout in downtown Chicago. But she's not going to bring up charges. Let me read from the report. Here it is. Kim Foxx is citing, quote, mutual combatants in her decision not to press charges against those arrested in a deadly daylight neighborhood shootout caught on camera last week between rival gang members. Now, mutual combat is a legal term used to define a fight or a struggle that two parties willingly engage in. Okay, except in video footage. The video footage that they have shows a car driving up to a house and opening fire, and then the people in the house returning fire. 3 gang members began shooting into this house indiscriminately in broad daylight, and then some individuals inside the house in self-defense returned fire, killing one of the offenders outside. So we have this, like I said, the shootout at the OK Corral here in downtown Chicago. 1 person is killed. 5 others are taken into custody after the cops get there to arrest them. But Kim Foxx and her prosecutors there have declined to charge any of them with felony or first-degree murder. What? Again, these are the same people that make up the whole, and it's made up. The greatest threat in America is white supremacists. No, it's not. It's made up by the leftists to distract from what's really going on. And I'll say it again. Had this not been black gang members, had they been white gang members, this whole story would be completely different. They'd all be sitting rotten in jail too. And once again, you'd have all the calls for gun control. Again, you don't hear any of that. In fact, they're not even being charged. They're not even being charged with having. I guarantee you, their guns were illegal. These are the same people that keep screaming for gun control. These are the same people that want to take our Second Amendment rights away. And they're not even being charged, because I guarantee you those guns that these gangbangers were using are illegal. Guaranteed. But nothing? Oh, no. They were mutual combatants. They're allowed to have a shootout in downtown Chicago in the middle of the day. From New York to Chicago to St. Louis. Talk about justice perverted with these leftist prosecutors. Remember Kimberly Gardner, the prosecutor in St. Louis, when she was prosecuting the McCloskeys, because they were white, she was prosecuting the McCloskeys for defending their home, which they have the right to do even under St. Louis law, but she was prosecuting them for defending their home, but she wasn't prosecuting the people that were invading their home. The BLM crowd. Justice perverted. Then we have this guy, George Gascon, in Los Angeles. Have you heard about him? George Gascon is the LADA, Los Angeles District Attorney. In fact, they're trying to recall him. This guy is so bad, even the people in LA are trying to get rid of him because he's not prosecuting crime, and he's emptying out all the prisons, and crime is going through the roof. And George Gascon, he was elected, quote, on a promise that he would, I love this terminology, He ran on a promise that he would rebalance the scales of justice. Yeah, rebalance the scales of justice. That's not what justice is all about. I don't have the time to get into what a disaster this guy George Gascon is in L.A. But suffice it to say, he's the criminal's best friend. And law in Los Angeles has been turned on its head. But here's something that you need to know, folks. What do Fox and Gascon and Gardner and literally dozens and dozens of other DAs and prosecutors all across the fruited plain all have in common? George Soros. They are George Soros-funded prosecutors. Yes, my friends, not a conspiracy theory, a fact. Yes, Emperor Palpatine, Darth Insidious himself, George Soros, has funded and financed all of these progressive, ultra-liberal leftist prosecutors all over the country. He has poured in. He has a super PAC called the Justice and Public Safety Super PAC, and he has funneled his own money, $17 million, millions and millions of dollars, into these local communities to get these people elected, these leftists, these progressives elected. And they all have such similar qualities, such as an antipathy towards law enforcement. And they have made social justice initiatives more important than public safety. And they're winning in their local elections because Soros is funding, as I said, funding them with millions of dollars of money. And their opponents, again, we think these local elections. We get caught up with the presidential election, with the election for Congress and Senate and legislatures, and we don't think much about the elections for state attorney generals and for district attorneys on the local level. We don't think about it, but George Soros and the left have thought about it, and they've been winning by funneling all these millions of dollars, and then their opponents don't have the money to match in these campaigns. So these George Soros prosecutors are all over, infiltrating the justice system all over America. And when we've got prosecutors who are not prosecuting crime like Kim Fox in Chicago or Kim Gardner in St. Louis or George Gascon in Los Angeles and others that we could just name all afternoon, but when they persecute the guiltless and refuse to prosecute the guilty, they're not social justice warriors. They're not justice warriors. They are purveyors of perversion who have perverted justice. I think I have a major clue as to what has happened to Lady Justice, my friends. George Soros and his minions have abducted her, and she's bound and gagged somewhere in the basement of the Department of Justice. It would be hilarious if it wasn't so serious. This is something important that I need to share with you, because this is where I'm going with this. Because justice perverted is liberty lost. We read in Deuteronomy, "You shall not pervert justice. You shall not show partiality, nor take a bribe, for a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and twists the words of the righteous. You shall follow what is altogether just," and here's the key, "that you may live and inherit the land which the Lord your God is giving you." When justice is perverted, liberty is lost. We read in 1 Samuel, "Now it came to pass when Samuel was old that he made his sons judges over Israel. But his sons did not walk in his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain. They took bribes, and they perverted justice. Then all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah and said to him, 'Look, you are old, and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now make us a king to judge us like the nations.'" Israel chose to forfeit their liberty because Samuel's sons turned aside from the ways of Samuel and the Lord and perverted justice. I need to tell you, folks, Lady Justice has a sister. Her name is Lady Liberty. And word has it that Lady Liberty is extremely distraught over her missing sister, Lady Justice. Lady Liberty is extremely worried and fearful that without her sister Justice, that she herself is in grave danger. I'll be back with more. Stick around.
Baptize my heart with your fire.
Fusion, Heart, Mind, and Soul. This is Open Up the Doors with Andy White here on Faith FM, WEGB 90.7 and 93.3 in Epic, WEGQ 91.7 in Quad. Thanks for joining in, everybody, all across the fruited plain. We got a few more minutes left here on this week's broadcast. But before I get into some of my closing thoughts, let me just say real quickly, if you've never subscribed to my YouTube or my Rumble channel, I would invite you to do so. You can subscribe to either one or both. AJ White 777 at Rumble, or just Andy White Open Up the Doors on YouTube. Hit the subscription buttons in their respective places. Hit the notifications so you will know when we go live, and when these broadcasts are also uploaded and archived both on YouTube and Rumble. All right, I think that's all I want to cover for now, because I got so much here and I'm always running out of time. Let me just say this real quickly as well, though. I do have a group page, an Open Up the Doors group page on connectzing.com, which is another social media platform, censorship-free, run by a couple of former Navy SEALs. It's a great little community over there on Connect Zing. I know it's not as big and popular as, like, some of the other ones, Gab and Getter, that people are going over to these days, but it's a real nice climate over there on Connect Zing. There's no advertising. There's really no trolling from crazy leftist liberals, but it's a free platform. I mean, leftists and liberals, they're invited over on Connect Zing as well. They may not like it very much, but they're invited. There is no censorship on Connect Zing. But I would like for you to consider and come on over to the Connect Zing group page there and join in. It works just like the group pages on Facebook as well. So again, it's connectzing.com. You'll find me. Andy White is my regular page. Open Up the Doors. There is a group page there as well. I want to reflect back real quickly on something that I was closing out the last block with, before I get into some other things here. There is such a connection, folks, between justice and liberty. This passage in 1 Samuel 8 really has been speaking to me all week. How Samuel's sons see Israel was governed by their constitution. In other words, the law of God. See, the law of God, the law of Moses, it's often called the law of Moses, always referred to as the law of Moses. But Moses didn't write the law. God gave it to him. It's really the law of God. But that was their constitution. They didn't have a king. They were ruled by God, and judges administered justice throughout the land. Samuel was the real last judge of Israel, but we read in 1 Samuel that he did appoint his sons, two of his sons, Joel and Abijah. He appointed them as judges in Beersheba, and they were wicked. And like I read a moment ago, they turned aside and perverted justice. And because of that, it made Israel say, and this has been resonating in my spirit all week, now make us a king. We want to be like the nations. And what God says to Samuel there in 1 Samuel chapter 8 is, he says, okay, fine, give the people what they want. Samuel, they haven't rejected you. They've rejected me. And I see so many correlations to what's going on in our nation right now with this. Because I need to tell you, the real justice warriors in America aren't the social justice warriors. It's not the Antifa crowd. It's not the leftists. It's those who were standing up for our Constitution, the Constitution that God gave us, I believe, for life, liberty, and the pursuit of justice. That's the Declaration of Independence, which, of course, led to the Constitution. But our Declaration of Independence stands on these principles of life, liberty, and the pursuit of justice. I know it says the pursuit of happiness, and I can't get into all of that right now. because the pursuit of happiness wasn't even the original word in Jefferson's draft, as I've shared in the past. But the point is this: without justice, there can be no happiness. Without liberty, there can be no happiness. Without innocent life being protected, none of these other things matter. For we hold these truths to be self-evident, that God has endowed us with inalienable rights. You see, folks, it's not about blind patriotism and blind nationalism. It's not about turning America into an idol. I see so many concerned, and rightfully so to some degree, about making America an idol. No. That's not where I'm coming from with this. It's not about blind patriotism or blind nationalism. It's about protecting and fighting for those things which God entrusted to us in our Declaration of Independence, in our Constitution. It's not about America as in some kind of nationalistic, fascistic sense, but it's about to steward what God has given us, to steward our God-given rights, and those rights which He bestowed upon us and gave us in the ideals of this nation. Which leads me, and I'm running out of time, the third attribute of Lady Justice that I need to mention is that Lady Justice carries a sword in her hand. The sword of justice. The sword represented authority in ancient times and conveys the idea that justice can be swift and final. In a human government which is legitimately fulfilling its delegated God-given task, the Lord has placed the sword of justice in their hand by His own authority. But understand this, and many Christians do not understand this. Governmental authority is delegated by God and under God. It is not absolute and is not unmitigated. And when it is abused, corrupted, and perverted, it ceases to be God's delegated authority. And I have shared numerous times on this broadcast that Romans 13 and 1 Peter chapter 2 do not teach, nor should they be interpreted as commanding an unqualified, unmitigated, absolute obedience to government. What they do teach is that government is an institution and purpose is ordained of God, and governmental authority is delegated to the authorities by God. And let it ever be remembered that both Peter and Paul, who wrote these ordinances, themselves were executed by their government for disobeying the government. So again, we've got to take the scriptures as a whole, not take things out of context. For whenever a government rises up and becomes an evil government that abuses its power and usurps the authority of God, that is the time for civil disobedience. We read in Romans that the government is God's minister to you for good. But if you do evil, be afraid, for He does not bear the sword in vain. For He is God's minister and avenger to execute wrath on him who practices evil. But when you're resisting evil, you're not practicing evil. Brother Andy, what can we do about these things? I'm running out of time. Thomas Jefferson said, when tyranny becomes law, resistance becomes duty. When a government ceases to perform its proper God-ordained function, as outlined, as I said a moment ago in Romans 13, it is no longer acting as a minister of God's for your good. What can we do about it? Folks, we need to keep raising our voices, for one thing. We need to keep raising the issue. We've seen this past week how moms and dads and parents have been voicing their concerns at school board meetings, rightfully so, constitutionally so. But now they're being called domestic terrorists by our government, which is out of control and which has perverted justice. But we need to keep voicing our grievances to our local congressmen and senators. We need to pressure them that they need to do something substantive about our liberties and about justice from the halls of Congress, and not just hold endless hearings that never go anywhere or accomplish nothing. We need to keep showing up at protest rallies, at the very least, to raise our voices and raise our concerns and rally the troops, like the rally we had just last week here in Hopog, New York, for life, liberty, and the pursuit of justice. We had last Saturday a great rally. Folks, we need to get involved and be involved in doing something. And I know there are naysayers that ask, what do these things accomplish? Well, number one, when you rally the troops together, people see they're not alone. People see that they're not alone and they can raise their voices. But the bottom line is this: he has shown you, oh man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? But to do justly. Take action. Do justly. Raise your voice. Get involved. Do something. Do whatever it is you can do. Just do it. The gospel demands that we speak out against injustice, not only in the hope of converting the sinner and the oppressor, but also under the Christian obligation to speak truth to power. Because remember, the day of true and final justice is coming. And it won't be blinded by political ideology or even blindfolded for impartiality. But the just judge is coming with eyes that are a flame of fire, where nothing is hidden from him and where all things are laid bare before him. He's coming with the sword of justice, my friends, which proceeds from his mouth as the word of truth and righteous judgment. He's coming not with the scale of justice in his hand, but with a rod of justice with which he will rule the nations, because he himself is the just one. And I'm out of time. I may have to pick up this topic again next week. There is so much more to say. But I got to run. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. God bless.